Good morning, afternoon, or evening. I am Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the attorney at Joy Disability. You're about to see what should be a question and answer format type of chat from our live session on a particular topic that we find that a lot of people keep asking about. So I'm sharing it here. If there are pieces that could have been added that weren't added during the live, because it's a kind of a fast-paced Q&A that we do every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You might just find that I added something to the end of it to give it a little more clarity and a little more details for those that are interested in that particular topic. So check to see if that's at the end. Otherwise, enjoy the video. Bye-bye. I'm curious, if I try to find some part-time work, should I report my efforts or wait and see what happens? That is an interesting question. If you start part-time, are you going over SGA or under SGA? Obviously, that's going to be a big difference. If it's over SGA, you're going to have to be denied, but your duty is to report it. Because the reason is, if you're over SGA, you do not pass step 1 of the sequential evaluation process. And concealing that, they tell you you have to report it. So if you just don't want to get in a gym. Now, sometimes people don't think they're over SGA, they think they're under SGA, and they don't realize they're supposed to be reporting it anyway. And then they win. Because nobody knows yet. It hasn't been reported by the IRS yet because everything takes a little time. I had a fellow like this who, little did I know, went back to work and was tipping over SGA for a few months. We win the case. Then I learned that he had maybe 4 months of SGA. Now, it's true that if they knew he had the SGA at the time they were making a decision, which they would have had to deny him. And then we would have appealed. And by then he would have stopped, So it would have worked out in the end, because in the end we would backtrack that to being a failed work attempt. We did that on appeal, but it would have interrupted and caused the appeal. So in his case, he had already prevailed. So this could be a problem, except it wasn't for him because, and I gave a little spanking, like, you didn't tell me you went back, like, remember your initial paper, I don't know, you have to tell us if you go back to work so we can make sure you're not screwing yourself. So in his case, those months were, let me try to remember, were they over TWP or over SGA or both? Over SGA is always over TWP. So for sure, he already used up a bunch of his TWP. I do think it was SGA, but it was still very part-time. And they just found that, when they review it, it's SGA, but it's not, the disability didn't end. And he's still in his trial work period. So he could have earned $10,000 a month, actually. He didn't, but. So all that affected the way that the numbers I keep in the background while he's collecting. So that if he does any more TWP months, eventually he's going to hit 9 in a 5-year period. And he's going to bump out of his trial work period. He's going to be an extended period of eligibility for 3 years. The first month he earns SGA in his extended period, he owes his benefit back for that month, but he can still collect after he stops doing the SGA. After 3 years, the first SGA month he loses disability. It's over. If he's still disabled, he has to reapply or file an expedited reinstatement application. So whether you should report it, if you're under SGA, there's no reason not to. They are going to look at it. Yes, they're going to see that you could do something or whatever. And then your medical records, which is why you want them hard, and excellent, with all those complaints all the time, including, hey, I went back to work part-time, doc, and it's killing me. Don't know how long I can last, right? Because if it is, it is. And it'd be nice to have that in the medical record. I always say err on the side of following the rules and being honest. So if you go for 2 weeks, do you have to do it within the first 2 weeks? I don't know when would be the right period of time. So that gives you a little leeway. Is it the first day you're on the job? I don't know, because what if you're not going to make it through the whole week? So probably, I wonder if the SSA would say, no, the very first day we need to know. I mean, they don't need to know before you go, obviously. So is it the first day? I don't know. I kind of feel like it would be a little bit longer than that. See how it goes, because I can't tell you how many people go for a couple days and then have to quit, or they get terminated. The employer's like, you're not really being able to keep up. No offense, but So. And of course, for all of you, if you do decide to go to work while you have a pending claim and you have an attorney or a non-attorney rep, you talk to them before you get a job, and we review that job and the pay and the hours, and the schedule can be important too. Hey there. Welcome to All Things Social Security. I'm Stephanie Joy. Whether you are a first-time viewer, an occasional viewer, a subscriber, or one of the 3 tiered benefactor members, I want to welcome you and let your video begin. Remember, if you haven't checked out the memberships, it might be something up your alley, because it gives you an opportunity for a little more Social Security disability attorney attention if you need it, but don't have representation and don't want to do a full-fledged consultation. Okay. Have a great one, guys. Stay tuned. Hey, wanted to clear up. Some folks have a misconception that when you're claiming disability, you have to be really unable to do anything productive, which would include even working of all kinds. So let's clear that up. That's a myth. That's a really big myth. And when people think that way, that would otherwise be able to better their income and their quality of life. If they had the real information, I think it can be really helpful because I see the benefits of people working part-time all the time. So in this case, the person had some really serious and has a claim pending for very serious, looks like cardiac issues, very, very serious. Still waiting on a determination from the SSA. The lawyer that the person has told him or her, I think her, Scarlett, that she could go to work, but to make sure to make less than $1,000 gross. And she's questioning, but that doesn't make sense to me. If I'm trying to get total disability, I think I should not go to work because I tire easily, can't stand for long, blah, blah, blah. Am I thinking correctly? Well, there's kind of two different issues here. From a personal perspective, if going to work is bad for your health of any kind of work, 5 hours a week even, because of medical impairments, my goodness, no, of course you'd want to speak to your doctor and not do anything contrary to that. But that's a whole different question. Then it doesn't make sense if you're trying to get total disability to go to work. Well, when we're talking about working while we're claiming disability or if we're a beneficiary after we've won, we're talking about very part-time work under SGA. And as her lawyer has pointed out, without maybe perhaps using the words, his recommendation of a max to earn was well under SGA and was well under TWP. Ideally, we do under TWP so that we retain the trial work period protections because we never expire out our trial work period. Certainly if we never even start a month that has it because we kept under that amount. And even if we have a few months, as you know, if you look at the trial work period playlist, there is some ones you can do over TWP, over SGA, and it will be fine, assuming all else being even and that you are still medically disabled and have the goods to prove it. Yeah, so I think it was great that her lawyer told her the reality is that yes, you can go to work. I suggest you keep it down below this amount, not some other slightly higher amount, et cetera, et cetera. There is, by the way, other optical guidelines that I tend to give people in terms of going back to work. And again, I love it when people can successfully go back to work very part-time if they're not able to work full-time and want to keep their benefits. Therefore, because I just think it's great. It's great for the world. It's great for the economy. It's great for them. It's great for their health usually. And it's great for their quality of life and their income level and the things they can do when they're not working. But aside from that, a lot of lawyers will tell their clients, I hear it all the time, no, don't work while making a claim. Don't. And I get it. It's an added bit of work. We're probably going to have to do an SSA 821, a few hours extra work, or an SSA 820 if they're working self-employed. I get it. It's more work for the lawyer, assuming he is doing, what he's supposed to be doing. But that's not really good advice. At least it's not informed advice. It doesn't even have to be advice, but I think it's important that people know from their lawyers or elsewhere the realities that the SSA does in fact have it, that you can work a certain limited amount. If you still remain disabled, you don't have to be bedridden, wheelchair bound, or claiming that you have no competitive, very part-time contributions you can make to the world. It's just not the case. And I don't think it's appropriate to not share that with clients who would otherwise either need to work and want to work or just want to work and, get that added quality of life. So kudos to Scarlett's lawyer because that person is honest with their client, even though it might mean, yeah, we got to do an 821 or an 820 and blah, blah, blah. So be it. That's part of the job. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That value added to the client, I think is super important. So yes, you are able to work. You are not thinking correctly on this one, Scarlett, but I think I explained that to you in writing, right? And one little thing, you use the word total disability. With Social Security, we don't really use the word total disability. That's kind of meaningless. Think about it. Totally disabled from what? I mean, technically totally disabled from full-time work under the rules, but that's really not how we refer to it. You're either disabled as defined under the Social Security laws, definitions, etc., or you're not. And if you are doing a job SGA, which would also mean full-time, but not necessarily full-time, or you could be doing some sort of job, doesn't have to be your old job, but some sort of other job under the rules you could be, the way they evaluate them, then yeah, you don't meet the definition of disabled and you don't prevail. But it's not really total disability because yes, you can work, contribute, increase your lot in life. In fact, that working while disabled is what allows some people on SSI to get themselves removed to Social Security disability, which in the end, in my opinion, and this is a very big generalization, So there could be exceptions. So don't get into a huff if you think you're one of them. Social Security is better than SSI. You don't have to be on the welfare ranks anymore, and you don't have to have that knee on your neck at all times. You're not having to avoid big luxury gifts of money or inheritance or lottery winnings or gambling winnings. You can have all that with SSD. So anywho, I stand by my statement that Social Security is better than SSI as a generality. All right, guys, talk to you later. We have a whole playlist, by the way, on working while disabled. It's pretty robust. It's been going on for quite a while, so they just all get added in there. It's quite a big library, I think. And anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye now. Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Good afternoon. Let's talk about a real life situation that occurs to a lot of people on a really regular basis. So I want to try to put this out there to give a little bit of context to what one can consider doing when they're not sure where their case is going to go and whether their health is going to improve and their capacity to do work. So here's the general situation. Person gets in a very bad injury situation, very, very bad, and clearly cannot work while they're recovering. I mean, getting the bones fixed and, walking again and all that. So 6 months go by, maybe you're out of, rehab and you're just trying to get around at home, can't stand long, can't do much, a lot of pain still, and of course going through physical therapy and everything else. So one has a mortgage, one has to pay, and they have no income coming in. What to do? Particularly difficult if you're single and don't have a partner who, can double up on work and bring in more income while you can't. So can you, for instance, work from home or something you can do remotely or some unique job that there might not be a lot of, but you might be able to get one? So for instance, one that does not exist in substantial numbers in the economy, but you happen to clinch one. Yeah. So your option is to go try to do that full-time work. Now, if you're in the middle of a claim or you're about to file but haven't, you have to tell them on the forms that you're working. And when they find out that you're working full-time, that would be SGA, substantial gainful activity levels, full-time. So they're not going to be able to take your application if you're working that full-time before you filed. Let's say you filed and now you're like, I just got this opportunity. I want to try it, see if I can do it, because I got to pay this mortgage. Otherwise I'm going to lose my house. Okay. So you're at the beginning of a claim. If you do a work history report, of course, you have to tell them that you're working. Even if you weren't working when you apply, you have to update them. And if you're working, they are going to, at that time, when they learn of it, have to deny you. I don't see a way around that. So let's say you've been working 2 months and you're way above SGA because you're full-time. All right. So there's not even a question of working under, say, the SGA amount and hoping that your disability will still be clear from your medical records despite your ability to work some level of part-time like that. Okay. So they deny you. You can then appeal if you continue to work full-time or over SGA if it's part-time. They will again say on reconsideration have to deny you because you're not at the first question of the sequential process, or the second is the person working SGA? And when they get to it, that means a denial right there because you don't even get to the next step because you're not disabled under the rules because you're able to work full-time or over SGA. And we know that because you're doing it. Okay. You get denied. And now your denial letter is going to say you can appeal for an ALJ hearing. Go ahead and appeal for ALJ hearing. If you have exceeded the 6 months of doing that excess work, that full-time or over SGA, by that time, you will have to that whole period will have been evidence of you generally being not disabled. So if you were disabled beforehand, it ended when you started that 6 months plus job. If you were disabled for more than 12 months before you started that successful stint that lasted more than 6 months, you could feasibly change your claim to a closed period claim, claiming that first year you were out before you went back to work. Okay. And that's possible. And that might be something if you're already now at the ALJ level, when that happens and you've been working more than 6 months, you can let it, you don't have to pull out of your case yet per se, but when the time comes for a hearing, and if you're still working, of course you're denied. If you make the argument, say, Judge, I'd like to amend and I would give them a heads up before you actually go to hearing. So send a letter on it and submit it, but I'd like to amend my disability. I was out for 2 years before I got this, trial job. It seems to be working out. I'd like to claim disability for those 2 years. Okay. It has to be where you are out for at least 12 months, of course. There has to be some argument that you were not working for or not working SGA for 12 months. So that's the closed period. So if you're in a position now and you, let's say you haven't filed, but you're like, I've got to get a remote, unusual job that I can do. Maybe I can pick my own hours, all these things that you can't really get in the regular work environment. But this person might need that. By all means, you can do it. If you are earning over the SGA, you will be denied at step 1, and then you can appeal. And the reason why I say keep going or consider keep going and appealing is because your work may not last the 6 months. So let's say you do go to work and you last for 4 months, and then the toll on the body or your performance just isn't up to par because of your disabilities. You can stop working, and then the argument is that was a failed work attempt. Yes, you were working more than SGA, but it did not last very long. It only lasted 4 months. If it never hits a 6-month mark, and if the stopping is because the disabilities were killing you. And by the way, you should be making that very clear when you speak to your doctors all throughout this working, that, the difficulties you're having. You want that to be known so that it's kind of recorded, the difficulties that you're having that you've been complaining about. Also, any kind of employer complaints or reprimands or issues, ideally they're going to be in writing so that later on you could show that I did stop and you could see I had performance, but I wasn't able to pull my weight or whatever. So again, you can appeal. You're going to apply. If you have a case running, they're not going to take your application at all. So you almost have to not be working when you do that. Then start this remote work. And then if it doesn't go, because you don't know if you're going to last 6 months, you just don't know. You're trying, right? And then we can argue that it's a failed work attempt and keep that case going. And would be appealing it if it's denied, just like normal. And then by the time it gets to the judge, we have it all laid out as to, yeah, she did try to work here. She was earning way over SGA. She's had a good job. It's just a rare job. Doesn't exist in substantial numbers. And then she had to stop because of the disabilities. So that is a very successful argument under the rules. Obviously, they have to have believed that you were disabled to begin with. Now, a person with catastrophic injuries, the argument is not that the person was never disabled. It's just that they were never disabled for the 12-month duration before they started doing this work that is SGA. So if you do the work SGA and you are able to and do work more than 6 months, it will end up being a successful work attempt, and it will mark the end of any disability period that you may or may not have been able to prove. Okay. But if you work and then you find that you can't go, more than X months, and it certainly isn't close to 6, you would just keep going. And that would be argued to be a failed work attempt because the SSA does want you to try to work. If anyone can go out and get a well-paying job that they can do, even if it's the rare one out there, but you've got it clinched, and now you're supporting yourself, paying your mortgage, and going on with life, despite your impairments that probably remain. Even if they would be otherwise disabling, you're not going to be able to get benefits when you're doing that. But it certainly beats, being on disability, perhaps. So it's always worth a try. So I hope I'm being clear on that. If you do it, I would suggest you try the job after you've already applied. So at least they take an application. And then they're going to deny you, but then you have a right to appeal. If they never take the application because of the step 1, I don't know if you're going to have the same opportunity, because it's never going to make it for medical workup. It's never going to get passed on to the state agency, the DDS, to get all your records and have their doctors review them and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So I know it's kind of complicated, maybe. Do you apply or do you not? If you have no choice, you have no choice. You're going to try. Most people end up trying. Other than, losing their house if they don't have anyone that they can rely on to foot the mortgage. Another thing sometimes people do is they rent out their house. If it's a 3-bedroom house and they can rent out a bedroom or 2, then they do it. I know that might seem uncomfortable, but if you have a $1,600 mortgage and you can rent out a room for $1,200 that includes their utilities, you just brought in $1,200 that is going to help you pay your mortgage. If you have a 3-bedroom, maybe you rent out 2 rooms and now they paid your mortgage. May or may not be enough. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. And then of course we tend to dip into our 401ks and our savings, whatever we have to do, to get by. But trying to go back to work is feasible, and if you try to go back to work and it lasts more than 6 months and your case is then canceled, or you withdraw your request for Social Security disability because you're like, it didn't last a year and I did go back to work and it did last more than 6 months, you can always apply again. If, let's say it's over 6 months, but then by 9 months you're done and it's due to disabilities and you still have those disabling conditions. Or it could be that the work stopped because that very unusual job opportunity was only temporary. And now you really couldn't do a job that exists in substantial numbers in the economy full time because they're just too arduous. Maybe you can never pull out 8 hours straight. You always have to have like a split shift. or be able to pick your hours, whatever the case may be. So just because you go back for more than 6 months and you completely lose the first application, don't think you can't try again, because if you're working, you're probably earning more credits. So your date last insured, check out those videos, is now going to be extended. So your term insurance is not going to be super, super short term, hopefully. So don't just like assume that you have no recourse. Once you filed, it got denied, you were still working, you didn't appeal, or you did appeal, whatever the case may be, but you continue to work over 6 months and then you withdrew your request, you can always file again if you have the credits. So again, know your date last insured, and know that if you continued working and earning the very little amount it takes to earn more credits, the date less insured you might be told about when you call SSA, the 1-800 number for that, 800-772-1213, that date might actually be incorrect to your benefit though. Your DLI, date less insured, may have actually gone up another year. Okay, extended out another year, giving you more time to file later. Okay, so give that some thought when it comes to working. And if you have an attorney or plan on having one, or a non-attorney representative, you keep them posted when you start any kind of work. You got to tell them, or else they can't help you. They can't tell you that, if you had just knocked it off 2 hours less, you would have been able to keep your case. They can't tell you if you don't share with them the work. And that's kind of one of your responsibilities when you make a claim, is to be very cognizant and sharing of the information about work, so that there's a whole accurate picture and nobody's time is being wasted, and you have all the information you need to make a savvy decision. There are some times when people have to drop their hours by a couple to stay under SGA. And it's not a cheating thing. It's that there is an amount you're allowed to earn up to. It's $1,470. Let's say you're making $1,500, but you can't do any more hours because you could never do more than 20 hours a week with your physical or mental conditions. But at the 20, you're making $2 more than the 1470 SGA for this year. Cutting that back is not pretending to be disabled when you weren't. You weren't able to work full time. You just were earning too much. So you can always fix that black line rule and drop your wage down to under SGA. You still have to prove you're disabled by the medical rules, so it doesn't make a difference. I mean, it's not gonna help a non-disabled person prove that they're disabled. They still have to prove it the exact same way with that very, very heavy load of medical evidence. Okay? All right. Working while you're claiming. It's doable. You just have to be very meticulous, okay? Don't want to see anybody lose their house because they can't pay their mortgage. So we got to almost thread that needle real fine, okay? Chat with you later.